Hey everybody, it is Monday, November 17th. You're listening to the Mo News Podcast. I'm Moshe Wanunu.
And I am Jill Wagner. This is the place where we bring you just the facts.
And we read all the news and read between the lines so you don't have to. As we begin another week here on the podcast, an important reminder to all of you who live in the New York City area, the tri-state area, you know, we have some airports. You could fly in for it. We have a premium happy hour coming up tomorrow with yours truly.
And yours truly here, the two of us.
The two of us will be hosting our own very special AJA AMA podcast, joint podcast, Ask Jill Anything, Ask Moshe Anything podcast. We got light bites, cocktails, great conversation. It is tomorrow night in New York City, but it's only for premium members. So join premium to get access, mo.news/premium. And then once you do that, there will be an RSVP link in your welcome email. And we're hoping to do this, Jill, across the country, be doing proper podcast tapings, etc. But we're sort of getting our feet wet here with this premium meetup in New York tomorrow.
As I mentioned on the podcast on Friday, I went to Columbus, Ohio over the weekend. And I had put on my Instagram account if anyone had recommendations. And even before I put the question out there, I got so many people messaging me with recommendations saying, I live in Columbus. Welcome to Columbus. Do a meetup in Columbus. So I said, we're on it. Let's see how New York goes. And we'll go from there.
We'll go from there and we'll launch our national tour next year. but
who's the main act, Moshe? Oh, it's us.
It's us. We'll have some warm-up acts. We'll build up. We'll build up over time, but it's all predicated on the success of this week's premiere here in New York. Again, it's relatively informal, but looking forward to meeting up with all of you, especially since both of us are based here in the New York area.
Well, I, for one, cannot wait, Moshe. But let's get to some news because that's what everyone's here for, right? Federal immigration authorities launched some raids in Charlotte, North Carolina over the weekend. We'll tell you how it's going, and also some new data out of Chicago. Just how many of the people arrested by ICE had criminal records?
Those numbers leading to a lot of questions about what has been taking place here the past couple months.
The political story of the weekend and likely the week, a major MAGA breakup. President Trump publicly splitting with Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, pulling his endorsement for her and attacking her online as she joins Democrats in a push to release the Jeffrey Epstein files.
We'll have what she is saying about the death threat she's now receiving due to Trump's remarks and her surprising apology on CNN, of all places, for her rhetoric all these years.
The U.S. continuing to ramp up its military footprint near Venezuela, and Venezuelan dictator Nicolas Maduro taking to the mic to sing for peace.
Doing his best impression of John Lennon, Jill.
Forget about an old 401k from a former job. Millions of Americans are losing billions of dollars in them, according to a new report.
An important reminder we will give you in today's podcast.
A first-of-its-kind study looking at why colorectal cancers are rising in younger adults, especially women under the age of 50. The findings pointing to ultra-processed foods and what a new DNA analysis of Adolf Hitler has discovered, including the rare genetic disorder he is believed to have had.
Many of you have questions about this. We've discussed on the premium account what this genetic disorder means for the size of a certain organ or his chances of having a very different sized organ.
We're not talking about his kidney here, people.
No, we're not talking about his kidney. So if you have small children in the car or don't want to discuss anything inappropriate or be awkward in the car, you might want to forward through the Hitler story for a variety of reasons.
And finally, using your credit card at checkout may soon get a lot more complicated. Why stores will start charging different fees depending on which credit card you use.
Yeah, the fallout of a major settlement recently. So you'll literally have different prices potentially for an Amex versus a Visa versus a MasterCard.
And Moshe has on this day in history.
On this day in history, Congress moves to what ultimately became the 9th capital of the United States. Major points if you can get the other 8.
Moshe, I think I know 2 other ones. Besides for DC.
All right, Jill, you're a third of the way there.
All right, we're starting with immigration and law enforcement, where there is now a pivot south. As ICE officials move to North Carolina, over the weekend, the Department of Homeland Security launched New immigration enforcement operations in Charlotte, North Carolina, the latest Democratic-run city that the Trump administration has targeted since starting off in Los Angeles this summer and then moving to Portland and Chicago. Local officials had been warning that a Customs and Border Protection operation would start Saturday. And residents reported more border and ICE agents in neighborhoods across the city. According to local news reports, federal agents arrested about 80 people during the first day of their operation. An immigrant rights group says that is the largest single day for immigrant arrests in the state's recent history. So politically, the state is pretty purple. North Carolina's 2 U.S. senators are Republican. Trump won the state in the last 3 presidential elections. Some local Republicans are applauding the move, while Democratic Governor Josh Stein is urging residents to respond to any inappropriate behavior by federal agents and notify local law enforcement. Charlotte is run by a Democratic mayor and is a racially diverse city of more than 900,000 residents. More than 150,000 of those residents are foreign-born.
There's been a significant growth in the population there in recent years, spurred by migration, especially from Latin America, and a number of the hubs where migrants and immigrants live were pretty emptied out this weekend as the raids began. We're getting various reports, Jill. We are following coverage from WBTV in Charlotte, as well as the Charlotte Observer newspaper, which has been staying on top of this. Among the sites for the raids over the weekend, a church in the Charlotte area where they witnessed masked federal agents arriving to detain one of their members. Apparently, 15 to 20 church members were doing yard work on the property while their children played games and spouses cooked meals. Agents then parked just outside a closed gate of the church, showed no identification before taking one man off the property whose wife and child were inside at the time. They were reportedly tried to grab others too, and a number of those people running into the forest to avoid immigration authorities. Here's a bit of the pastor from that church.
They don't ask for nothing. Just they took him, and right now we are sad because we have more people, childs, and everybody is scared. And I don't know what happened because this is really bad.
Among those detained, Jill, in a variety of the raids over the weekend, included U.S. citizens, one of them speaking to the Associated Press over the weekend. His name is Willie Aceituno. He's 46 years old, born in Honduras, but is currently a U.S. citizen. And he says that the Border Patrol agents came after him not once, but twice, at one point breaking his car windows, forcing him out of the car and throwing him to the ground, saying they didn't believe he was an American citizen. Eventually, he was released after showing documents that proved his citizenship. But we are seeing things take place in Charlotte, which are very familiar to those of us who've been watching what's been taking place in Chicago, Portland, and LA.
The leader of the Border Patrol operation in Charlotte is Gregory Bovino. He was also in charge of Chicago and Los Angeles operations. He posted photos on social media of 5 detained people who he said had criminal histories, calling the raids a success. It comes as the Pentagon is withdrawing some National Guard soldiers from Chicago and Portland, Oregon, just weeks after Trump ordered them there over the objections of state and local leaders. About 200 Texas Guard members in Chicago and 200 California Guard members in Portland are now headed back to their home states. Officials say they are right-sizing the mission and leaving smaller standby forces in place. Various rulings from judges have prevented the administration from fully deploying the Guard in those cities.
Now, authorities from the Department of Homeland Security say this is just the latest in their mission to clean things up, to deport criminal illegals who are here. There are estimated to be upwards of 15 million people here illegally, but the focus for years has always been those who committed crimes here in the U.S. This time around, DHS is focused on everybody. But you see in the sweeps here that they are pulling people over and at times detaining people and arresting people who are American citizens, which is a concern here. It's led to lawsuits. And we're watching all of that now unfold in the aftermath of what's been taking place in Chicago. That's where what they call Operation Midway Blitz has been underway. It's resulted in more than 3,000 arrests, according to the Department of Homeland Security. The Trump administration has said for a couple of weeks now they would release the names of all the people that they have picked up in Chicago. We still haven't gotten much, but over the weekend, in response to a court case, they did have to release a list of just over 600 of the names of people they have detained in the Chicago area. And when several media organizations have gone through those names, they have found that only 16 of the 600 plus individuals were actually of what's deemed by the government high public safety risk, meaning 584 of the 600, or about 97%, did not have a criminal record. May have crossed the border illegally at some point, but didn't commit crimes here in the U.S. Now, again, the focus for many years was those who've committed crimes here. You've heard from the administration, they're going after the worst of the worst, but ultimately here, they're picking people up. We've been covering the story of the woman who was a daycare worker who was trying to run to the daycare to try to get away from immigration authorities. Incidentally, if you followed that case in Chicago recently, she has been released from detention. She has a court case today that we will be closely following. But again, just over about a dozen of the 600 had charges like aggravated assault, DUI, domestic battery, but 97+%, no crimes committed here. Leading to questions in Chicago and from critics of all of this, you're creating all this chaos, spending all this money, and the vast majority of people you're picking up here appear to have no criminal background. In many cases, might have work permits, might be, in fact, paying taxes on their work. Nonetheless, you do hear from the administration, you do hear from DHS that the focus is on everybody that is not here legally. If you missed an appointment back in 1996, they will grab you and deport you, regardless of what you've been up to since then, among other examples that we're talking about. And they will point out, Jill, that this has had a major deterrence effect, that when you look at the border over the last few years, some pretty stark numbers. Hundreds of thousands of people crossed in recent years, including this area called the Darien Gap between Colombia and Panama, which is where you've seen a lot of migrants coming out of South America. In recent years, that's ranged from 250,000 to 550,000 people crossing annually. This year, 2,900 people, less than 3,000. So part of the goal here with all of this, despite the reaction, despite what's taken place in Chicago, despite the fact that you're talking about the detention of American citizens, at times the feds will say, well, look what it's done on the border, look how it's secured the border, and effectively stop people from coming across at this juncture. We're going to continue to monitor what's taking place in all of these places. That case in Chicago, multiple cases in Chicago, what's taking place in Charlotte here this week. Jill, they've dubbed that Operation Charlotte's Web after the children's novel. And then they're focused on New Orleans, apparently. Authorities now starting to send people down to New Orleans for what they call Catahoula Crunch, Catahoula being the official state dog of Louisiana. So that's expected to be the next place that immigration authorities turn to.
All right, now to politics, where one of the most visible rifts inside of the MAGA movement is out in the open. On Friday, President Trump announced that he is withdrawing his support and endorsement of Georgia Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. So rewind to just about a year ago, she was virtually attached to him on the campaign trail. She has been one of his closest and loudest allies on Capitol Hill. But fast forward a year, he is now calling her a traitor, a disgrace, and wacky on social media, saying that he is open to backing a primary challenger against her. So what has changed here? For one, Greene has broken with Trump on a few high-profile issues. That includes that she has come out against Israel. She has pushed for more protections around healthcare costs, like the Democrats have been calling for, saying that the president isn't doing enough about healthcare costs. She's also warning against deeper U.S. involvement overseas. But the final straw appears to be her support for releasing the Epstein files. She is one of just 4 Republicans who joined all House Democrats in signing a petition to force a vote on the Epstein Files Transparency Act last week. Her support allows the largely Democratic group to bypass Republican leadership, and it guarantees a floor vote on whether the DOJ must release all of the Epstein files. Trump has criticized the Republicans who are working with Democrats. A floor vote on the legislation is expected this week.
Yeah, we'll be closely watching that over in the U.S. House. The 4 Republicans include Marjorie Taylor Greene, include Lauren Boebert, include Nancy Mace from South Carolina, and Thomas Massie of Kentucky, all of whom Trump has come out against, in some cases personally lobbying, his team lobbying those Republicans not to vote with Democrats this week, because effectively Speaker Johnson has been blocking a vote on releasing the Epstein files. He's been very much hook, line, and sinker with President Trump on this. Trump has said, I don't want to focus on the Epstein files, block this from coming out. And these Republicans defying him And so he thinks these Republicans are weak. He's been critical of them generally, but Marjorie Taylor Greene very specifically, especially since in recent weeks, she's been coming out against policy after policy at the White House. Trump this weekend taking to social media, speaking to the media about Marjorie Taylor Greene, trying some of his infamous nicknames. He has taken to calling her Marjorie Traitor Greene, as well as a lightweight Congresswoman, Marjorie Taylor Brown. He tried to explain in a post that green grass turns brown when it begins to rot. So he's explaining that she's rotting.
Too complicated.
When you're explaining a nickname, it's not going to work. So it appears here that he's going with Marjorie Traitor Greene, but she is politically concerned about this. She says that the insults, that the calling her of a traitor, has put her in harm. She's had to hire security. She's receiving death threats. Here's a bit of what she had to say on CNN on Sunday.
He called me a traitor, and that is so extremely wrong. And those are the types of words used that can radicalize people against me and put my life in danger.
Now, if you hear Marjorie Taylor Greene complaining about the word traitor and think to yourself, wait, I feel like she's used that word in the past, you would be right. And that is something that came up in the CNN interview. She called Joe Biden a traitor. She called Nancy Pelosi a traitor. She called Kamala Harris a traitor. It goes on and on and on. She's called Republicans traitors. It is among the many things she has said through the years. She has been overwhelmingly in support of Donald Trump for a number of years. And as he's been calling numerous other people various names, insulting them, saying, the things that he says on social media, Marjorie Taylor Greene never really said anything about that. And that's something CNN's Dana Bash asked her about, as Greene was worried and critical of the president and the impact of his remarks here. Dana Bash saying, where have you been all these years, Marjorie? Here's a bit of that.
You posted on X that President Trump is, with his comments, fueling a, quote, hotbed of threats against you. Obviously, any threats to your safety are completely unacceptable. But we have seen these kinds of attacks or criticism from the president at other people. It's not new. And with respect, I haven't heard you speak out about it until it was directed at you.
Dana, I think that's fair criticism. And I would like to say humbly, I'm sorry for taking part in the toxic politics. It's very bad for our country. And it's been something I've thought about a lot, especially since Charlie Kirk was assassinated, is that I'm only responsible for myself and my own words and actions. And I am committed, and I've been working on this a lot lately, to put down the knives in politics. I really just want to see people be kind to one another.
It was really interesting to hear that, Jill, someone like Marjorie Taylor Greene, who has a long history of extreme posts, violent posts, calling Democrats terrorists. She has said Democrats want to make all of our kids trans. Biden ran an administration full of pedophiles. She once posted an image of a gun alongside a Democratic congresswoman. She said that Nancy Pelosi committed treason and that treason is punishable by death and that she should be in prison. She mocked survivors of the Parkland school shooting. She called it a false flag event. She said Black Americans are slaves to the Democratic Party. I could go on and on here. She talked about Muslim members of Congress being part of an Islamic invasion of America, insinuated that the Jews controlled the weather.
The famous space lasers comment.
Space lasers. So needless to say, there's a long history here of Marjorie Taylor Greene effectively engaging this sort of thing. And now she's calling it out now that she is the victim. Now she's at the other side of things. So she says in these interviews, Jill, it's fascinating to hear that she's all about turning over a new leaf, that she doesn't want to be part of the problem anymore. We will see how that unfolds here, whether that's something that she's doing in earnest or just in reaction to the Trump criticism here. Notably, as he returned to Washington on Sunday night, he was asked about all of this, and he goes, her life is in danger? Who is that? Marjorie Traitor Greene? I don't think her life is in danger. I don't think anybody cares about her. So it does not appear that Trump is letting up on any of this. Now, she is getting a bunch of grief from MAGA world about her new tone, saying she's going on The View, she's going on liberal media outlets, apologizing. Who is this person? At the same time, you do have people in MAGA world who are very upset at Trump here. who are defending Marjorie Taylor Greene. They believe that Trump is too internationalist. There was a fight, Jill, over MAGA. Who's true MAGA? Like, do you care, like the America in MAGA? How MAGA are you? And people who believe that Trump is too internationalist, that he's involved in the Middle East, he's looking at potentially, we'll talk about Venezuela here in a second, and ultimately, they want to be even more isolationist. You then have sort of the extreme MAGA. You have the Nick Fuenteses and the neo-Nazis element of the party who say, there's too much of a relationship with Israel, too much of a relationship with anybody. We need to be focused on everything here. And it comes as, now that we're past the elections in November, we're now less than 3 years left of Trump here before 2028. And the party is having an internal fight, which we've discussed in the past, about what is the future of this party. Who is running for president, the J.D. Vances, the Rubios, hell, maybe even Tucker Carlson, and Marjorie Taylor Greene, and how they're appealing to elements of the party and this coalition that has effectively been taped together here by Donald Trump. What will it be? How will it split in the aftermath of Trump here? And you're seeing a bit of that play out in this fight with Marjorie Taylor Greene and the Epstein files.
Speaking of which, Greene posted text messages that she sent to Trump and his associates on Friday, urging him to release the Epstein files. In one of the texts, she appears to write, quote, "Stop ignoring the women." She also urged Trump to investigate Epstein's ties to the Clintons. U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi saying on Friday that she has ordered a top federal prosecutor to investigate Epstein's ties to Trump's political foes. And that does include former President Bill Clinton. Trump has also pointed to former Treasury Secretary Larry Summers. Here is Trump on Air Force One Friday, distancing himself from Epstein and pointing fingers at Clinton. He's also dismissing an email leaked last week in which Epstein allegedly claimed that Trump, quote, "knew about the girls."
President, what did Jeffrey Epstein mean in his emails when he said you knew about the girls?
I know nothing about that. They would have announced that a long time ago. It's really, what did he mean when he spent all the time with Bill Clinton, with the president of Harvard, who you know, that is Summers, Larry Summers, whatever his name is, and all of the other people that he spent time with. Jeffrey Epstein and I had a very bad relationship for many years. But he also saw Skype because I was president. So he dictated a couple of memos to himself, give me a break. You got to find out, what did he know with respect to Bill Clinton, with respect to the head of Harvard, with respect to all of those people that he knew, including J.P. Morgan Chase. Yeah, they can have whatever they want. They already do. I think they have 50,000 pages already. Look, this is a Democrat hoax. This is a hoax put out by the Democrat, and a couple of few Republicans have gone along with it because they're weak and ineffective.
Trump's comments come after thousands of emails from the Epstein estate were released by the House Oversight Committee last week, many of which referenced Trump's own past interactions with the convicted sex offender. Epstein, of course, cannot talk about this now because he died by alleged suicide in jail in 2019 while awaiting trial on federal sex trafficking charges.
Yeah, reminder here, Trump and Epstein were friends. We've talked about this in the past, going back to the 80s and 90s and early 2000s. And that's when the relationship soured about 20 years ago. Trump says that part of that had to do with the fact that Epstein kept hiring some of the younger women he had working at Mar-a-Lago to work for Epstein. He told Epstein to stop, and Epstein kept doing it. And that was among the issues that apparently led to the fallout, according to Trump. But according to these emails, it appears that Epstein remained very interested in Donald Trump. And so he would constantly correspond about him, talk to other people about him. And Trump was just among the many people who Epstein stayed connected to, powerful types, including former President Clinton as well. Now, we should note no specific allegations here from women victims of Epstein when it comes to Bill Clinton or Donald Trump here, which is leading many folks to be curious about why Trump is so resolute about not releasing files here. It's leading to questions being like, what does he think? What could come out here? And now Trump again says it's about politics, that he just wants to focus on the economy and things that he's up to, and not about the Epstein files. But increasingly, it has people going, And with the release of those emails last week, including a number of them that mentioned Trump, had Epstein talking about Trump, asking about Trump, making various claims about Trump. Now, keep in mind, Jeffrey Epstein, not the most trustworthy person in the world. He himself, a pedophile. He himself, there's various things that he writes in those emails that have been proven to be false eventually. But ultimately, when it comes to both Democrats and Republicans in the country, one of the few things they agree on they want to see the files released. Any poll you look at, NPR, CBS, Fox News, etc., 80 to 90% of Americans, Democrats, Independents, and Republicans want to see files released as long as the victims' names are redacted here. So we're going to watch that vote this week, Jill. There could be a surge of Republicans that join Democrats here. We've been talking about those 4 Republicans, but they're effectively giving permission to up to, we could see, some people are predicting 100 Republicans join Democrats because it's a pretty popular vote to vote for the release of the Epstein files here. Despite the president's opposition, you are seeing cracks among Republicans on this. Now, even if the legislation passes the House, it faces long odds in the Senate, and of course, Trump could veto it. Now, will he? Will it get to that point? We shall see. But ultimately, what you're going to end up seeing is this fight's going to play out in the Senate. Will there be a handful of senators who are willing to join Democrats to vote on this Epstein release bill to try to force the Justice Department's hand here? That's something we will closely watch for. And Jill, as we tape this, as we're hitting about 10 p.m. Eastern time on Sunday night, Trump out with a very long social media post. In essence, it says, "Release the Epstein files. I don't care!" ! All I do care about is that Republicans get, all caps, back on point, which is the economy, affordability, reducing inflation, etc. So after days, after private meetings that they've had trying to get Republicans not to vote to force the release of the Epstein files, Trump, a turnabout on Sunday night. Clearly the pressure within his own party, within the MAGA base, is getting to him. And he says at the end, let's start talking about the Republican Party's record-setting achievements and not fall into the Epstein trap, which is actually a curse on the Democrats, not us. So he continues to call this Democratic hoax. He's gotten pushback. One of the reasons during the campaign last year, he was the one pushing and having supporters call for the release of the Epstein files. And then, of course, that didn't happen, leading to this whole controversy. He does reiterate that, a whole number of Epstein things have been released already, but there is a lot that still have not been released by the Justice Department. We were watching this vote, and it appears Trump is giving permission to Republicans here to vote for the release of the Epstein files. What that actually means ultimately, well, we will find out.
Okay, time for the speed read from the Associated Press. The U.S. is significantly expanding its military presence around Venezuela. The Navy's most advanced aircraft carrier, the USS Gerald R. Ford, has now entered the region. It's part of the buildup that includes roughly a dozen warships, a nuclear submarine, F-35 jets, and about 15,000 troops in the broader Caribbean. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, who faces U.S. drug trafficking charges and a $50 million reward for information leading to his arrest, is taking another approach to plea for de-escalation. Over the weekend, Maduro broke out into one of his more bizarre responses. He was at a rally with supporters, singing the John Lennon classic about peace. Imagine. Take a listen.
Peace, peace, peace. Imagine us people.
So for everybody not watching on YouTube, Maduro is swaying. His hands are up in the air. He's feeling the music, as they say, Moshe.
Jill, it's similar to other weird public appearances he's made recently where he's like, I want peace, 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 peace. There's a clip we put up on Instagram a couple of weeks ago. It does not appear publicly he's ready to leave power. He's not indicating that in any way. And that appears to be one of the main goals here from the White House. They want Maduro out, and they want him out ASAP. One of the reasons you've seen this huge military buildup around Venezuela. Because remember, if the goal is just about the drugs from Venezuela, there are much larger producers and conduits for drugs into the U.S., namely Mexico and Colombia versus Venezuela. But Trump has had an issue with Maduro going back a very long time. Again, he is this rogue leader here. He defied the election results last year. It's led to a huge migrant issue. And he sits on top of the largest known oil assets in the world, which is super interesting here because according to a New York Times report over the weekend, apparently Maduro made an offer recently, according to sources, that would have essentially given the U.S. control over much of the oil supply of Venezuela without resorting to military action. Basically, let me stay in power here and I will give you the oil. Now, Trump called off those talks recently, but other sources say that the talks are not entirely dead here. And the deployment of the aircraft carrier, you just mentioned, is a means to gain even more leverage over Maduro here, strike an even better deal. There is this debate happening internally. You have the Pete Hegseths and the Marco Rubios of the world who are very intent on some sort of operation to take out Maduro. You have others within the administration who are much more reluctant on any sort of military action here. So there's no confirmed plans here and no final decisions here made by Trump, at least we think, though he was asked about it on one of his Air Force One flights by the media on Friday night. And he's like, you don't know if I made a decision. I may have made a decision. So he's definitely keeping it close to the vest right now. The social media posts from Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, appear to be leaning in a direction like there's going to be some sort of military event here soon. But it's, again, we're going to see what happens here. There have been 20 or so operations to take out alleged drug smuggling boats, but you don't bring in the largest aircraft carrier in the world just to take out some drug boats. Clearly, there's a bigger plan here. What Trump's final decision is still appears to be up in the air.
Some financial news from the Wall Street Journal. A new analysis finds millions of Americans are leaving billions of dollars on the table in investment gains because of forgotten 401k accounts. So this happens when former employers sweep their 401k money into individual retirement accounts that are perked in cash. It is called involuntary rollovers. So here's how it works. If you leave a job with $1,000 to $7,000 in your 401k, your former employer can automatically roll that money into what is called a safe harbor IRA if you don't respond. They must notify the account owner before doing so, but many new hires are automatically enrolled in 401k plans, and some workers might not even realize that they have retirement savings.
Now, those IRAs are often kept in cash-like money market accounts with very low returns and actually fees that can actually shrink your balance over time. One example they cited in this journal piece, an account that earned about $7 in interest last year actually paid out $15 in fees. That's at the same time the S&P rose by 24%. So the estimates here are pretty significant. About 1.7 million accounts are expected to be rolled this way in 2025, rising to 2.2 million a year within the next few years here. And these small scattered accounts already hold 28 billion with a B dollars, projected to hit 43 billion in just the next couple of years. The bottom line is, folks, you may have changed jobs recently or several times recently. Well, it's worth checking if you have an old 401k account sitting in cash somewhere instead of being invested for growth here. Sometimes you might forget to sign up for a 401k plan, or you'll roll the 401k money into an IRA and forget to reinvest the cash. Jill, I remember receiving a notification several years after leaving my job at Bloomberg years ago and went to CBS that I had forgotten about my 401k after leaving that job. But thankfully, one of the notices came in the mail. And I was like, oh my God, I have like money in this 401k. And I made sure to deal with it. But sometimes you might not get those notifications. So just this is a reminder. If you think you might have had a 401k at a recent job, definitely go double check and make sure that that money is accessible to you and being invested properly.
Some health news now from CNN. A first of its kind study may help explain why colorectal cancer is rising in younger adults, especially women under the age of 50. It shows that the consumption of ultra-processed foods has been in lockstep with the rising cancer rates. Women who eat more ultra-processed foods on a daily basis had a greater risk of developing colorectal polyps before the age of 50, as compared with women who consume far less of the processed foods. Specifically, women who ate the most ultra-processed foods at roughly 9 to 10 servings a day had about a 45% higher risk of developing the precancerous polyp compared to women who ate the least, which was 3 servings a day on average. Now, just because colon polyps are found, that does not mean that they are cancerous. In fact, there's only about a 5% risk that the average colon polyp develops into cancer over time. However, the findings do suggest one possible reason that colorectal cancer rates are on the rise in adults under the age of 50. The study's results do not show causation, but clear correlations. The data comes from a multi-decade study of nurses analyzing the diets of nearly 30,000 female nurses.
Yeah, we've told you about ultra-processed foods. You've heard about ultra-processed foods. We're talking about those ultra-processed breads and breakfast foods, sauces, condiments, sugar, artificially sweetened beverages. They're often high in sugar, salt, and additives, low in fiber. They make up about 70% of our food supply these days in the U.S., 60% of our caloric intake, and they've already been linked to a number of cancers or risk of cancers here. Researchers say that the ultra-processed foods may alter your gut microbiome, its protective lining, causing chronic inflammation, producing toxic molecules when metabolized, and that could then in turn lead to higher rates of cancer. Now, as you mentioned, no direct causation here, but we do see correlation, and we've seen now correlation with ultra-processed foods and a number of cancers in recent years. There was a recent report from the American Cancer Society that found that people younger than 55 went from accounting for 11% of colorectal cancer back in 1995 to now 20% just over 20 years later. So doubling over the course of the past 20 years. So just a reminder to diversify your diet, get those veggies, get those fruits, those beans, nuts, seeds, water, and bring down the ultra-processed foods in your diet. It's a good thing on a number of fronts.
Okay, here it is, the story everyone's been waiting for from CBS, something many of you guys were messaging us about over the weekend and we talked about over on the premium account. Researchers behind a new documentary in the UK say they have verified and sequenced the DNA believed to belong to Adolf Hitler. The DNA was taken from blood-soaked material on a couch in the bunker where he killed himself back in 1945. The team's analysis suggests that he carried a genetic mutation linked to a rare condition called Kallmann syndrome. So this is where, if you are listening with kids, you perhaps want to just skip over the next couple of minutes.
Unless you want to do a quick bio class for them.
So according to the Cleveland Clinic, the syndrome can, quote, disrupt the process that drives puberty and manifest in symptoms that include undescended testicles, and then in less than 1% of cases, a micropenis. Yes, a micropenis. Hence why so many of you messaged us. Now, the researchers stress that no genetic condition can explain or excuse his actions, like the worst global war in human history that killed tens of millions of people, the murder of more than 6 million Jews, and others in the Holocaust. However, Moshe, it could explain, I guess, a severe inferiority complex.
Explain a lot of things, Jill, especially if he's in those less than 1% of cases, which is the headline that caught so many people's attention. Related to this research, by the way, this is not the first indication that there may have been some issues in that region. A medical document from Hitler's prison stay from 1923, when he served some prison time there as part of his failed attempt at what was called the Munich Beer Hall Putsch, had already suggested that he apparently had one undescended testicle. Historians say these new genetic clues line up with those old records, including those prison records. And the historians here believe this could explain why Hitler was never known to have intimate relations with women, girlfriends, etc. Of course, there was Eva Braun there at the end. But for the most part, that was not part of his history. And so this connects in that way. Now, one of the other things they look at here as part of this new documentary is the theory that he may have had Jewish ancestry. You may have heard this through the years. There's a rumor that one of his grandparents was Jewish. And so they actually did a DNA analysis here, comparing the blood samples with those of known relatives. And the backstory here is that his paternal grandmother became pregnant with his father while working in a Jewish home. So there was a rumor that his paternal grandfather might have been Jewish. But researchers say the Y chromosome analysis matched confirmed male line relatives of Hitler's, meaning he did not inherit Jewish ancestry through his father. That it doesn't appear she became pregnant by somebody, who lived within the home who happened to be Jewish. But of course, there's a lot of caveats here, and a lot of researchers are very interested in looking at the data here. None of the underlying genetic data or methodology here has been shared with the public. It has not been peer-reviewed either by other researchers. And so without access to the raw data, some other researchers are saying, well, we need to confirm all of that. Now, the documentary team says they have submitted all of their research to a high-profile scientific journal. They hope to publish it soon. So we will await further details on, well, all of that, all of the things we just discussed there.
And finally, from the Wall Street Journal, the price of goods may soon be different depending on what type of credit card you use. For example, a cup of coffee at a local coffee shop could cost you $5, $5.10, or even $5.25, depending on which credit card you use at checkout. And this comes after a big settlement between Visa, MasterCard, and U.S. merchants. The tiered pricing will give businesses more power to charge fees based on what it costs them to process different credit card transactions. For example, a basic card would get a lower fee, while a higher fee would be put on a premium rewards card. Companies could also refuse certain high fee cards within a network. How it currently works is that if a merchant accepts Visa, it has to accept all Visa cards regardless of the differing interchange rates on those cards. The interchange is a fee paid by a merchant to the card issuing bank for processing a transaction every time a customer swipes. This agreement comes after a 2-decade antitrust battle between banks and businesses over their interchange fees.
Yeah, businesses looking for more freedom here, feeling like they're being burnt in the process. Now, a judge still needs to sign off on this before you could see a change in stores, but stores have been paying the price for the different percentage charges on different cards. Now, under this settlement, once a judge signs off, a basic credit card could have a 2.5% surcharge, whereas a rewards card could have a 3% surcharge. So if you're using that Chase Sapphire card or certain Amex cards, you're going to potentially pay more. If you're using a basic no-fee card, you might pay less. This is something you may have seen for years. It's one of the reasons why certain stores won't take Amex, right? You might see we take everything but Amex because Amex tends to charge a higher fee here. So this allegedly will give more power to the merchant. This is something they've been fighting for a while. Now, debit cards will not be affected, and you may actually start to see stores nudging you towards using your debit card versus using a credit card. Like, hey, we'll take debit or cash. You see that at the gas station still. Jill, you might notice the two different prices at the gas station if you pay cash or debit versus credit. They tend to knock off a few cents a gallon off of gas. So look out for potentially new visual markers here in the coming months once a judge signs off of this, new fee tiers, and leading to, a debate you probably haven't had until now, which is which credit card should I use at the store based on how much my bill is going to be. All right, now time for On This Day in History. On this day in 1800, the U.S. Congress officially holds its first session in an incomplete capital in Washington, D.C. Now, D.C. would end up being the 9th of 9 capitals that the U.S. had for the first 25 years or so, between 1776 and 1800. Jill, which were the two capitals that you knew of prior to D.C.?
New York and Philadelphia.
Ding, ding. So Philadelphia was our first. New York was our 8th. In between there, we went Philly, Baltimore, Lancaster, York, Princeton, Annapolis, Trenton, then New York number 8, and then DC number 9.
I smell a trivia question.
We may put that on the weekly quiz for those of you premium members who take our weekly news quiz every Friday. All right, on this day in 1869, after 10 years of construction, the Suez Canal officially opens in Egypt. On this date in 1973, one of the more famous quotes from President Nixon, "I am not a crook," he declared at a press conference when asked about Watergate. On this day in 1991, the first ad for a condom aired on network television. Growing concern about AIDS and STDs led to ads for condoms for the first time on this day in 1991. And a bit of pop culture history. On this day in 1973, Schoolhouse Rock's Conjunction Junction first aired. On this day in history, we can mark the opening of 2 James Bond movies 11 years apart. On this day in 1995, GoldenEye, starring Pierce Brosnan, premiered in theaters. And then on this day in 2006, Casino Royale, starring Daniel Craig, opened. And I know, Jill, there's a lot of speculation about the latest Bond, the newest Bond that we'll be seeing here in the coming years. And one more piece of movie history. On this day in 2008, the first film adaptation of the Twilight Saga premiered in theaters. Those vampire-themed novels for teens. They still big, the Twilight?
I really wouldn't know because my kids, I think, are way too young. So if anyone has any tweens or teens out there, let us know if the Twilight movies, etc., are still big.
And sticking with movie news, we did see over the weekend, Sony has bought the rights to the Labubu movie. They don't know what they're going to do with it yet. Are they going to make it animated? Are they going to make a live action film? But they have the rights to Labubu, so look out for the first Labubu movie coming up soon.
And a Labubu float on the Thanksgiving Day parade.
Yes, that is just weeks away. The movie is probably a couple of years away.
Just when everyone's over Labubus.
Are we ever going to be over Labubus?
I mean, we're over Beanie Babies, right? I mean, it's sort of...
It took like 20 years.
We will see. Okay, everyone. Thank you for listening to the Mo News podcast. If you like what you hear, please share this with your friends. It will help us grow. Follow us, subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and review us kindly in the App Store. We appreciate it.
Thanks for those reviews, and we will see all of you premium members tomorrow night in New York City.